Hello, one and all, and welcome to the podcast we call the Fantastival with myself, Stephen Nussbaum, in the podcast where I invite my guests to come on and talk to me all about their musical taste, their memories, their experiences, and I get to collate their fancy festivals, which I have christened Fantastivals. We are now on episode number 112. We are now in late November. The World Cup has started. How strange is that? Watching England playing when it's raining at home and sunny away. Great start to the World Cup for England, although this has been recorded before the Wales match, so we'll have to see what happens with that one. And Christmas now only 1 month away as 2022 comes to its conclusion. Before we start this one, I must say a massive thank you to my last guest, Ady Rob, in episode 111. A great guest, so passionate about music and a great chap to boot. So that was 111. This is 112, and I'm delighted to be joined by the A to D of indie himself this week. Ladies and gentlemen, it can only be the one, the only. It's Ady Hanson.
Hello, mate. How we doing?
All good. All the better for finally getting you on the Fantastival Podcast, my friend. A work in progress, but you're finally here.
Well, it has been a while, hasn't it? I mean, I've had COVID twice when we were supposed to have done it. So, you know, we finally got there, and I'm looking forward to this, mate.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the pod as well. 112. That's some good going, man.
Yeah. What turned out as a bit of a lockdown hobby has turned into a weekly obsession.
That's cool. I enjoyed that. I've been listening to quite a few episodes, especially recently, to get some research done.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that massively. So before we talk all about music, Ady, I always like to check in with my guests, find out how they're doing. It's very important that people are okay to talk and they can communicate with one another. So, Ady, mate, how are you?
I'm not too bad currently, mate. I've had my ups and downs this year. It's been a bit of a tough year for us, but at the minute, looking forward to Christmas with the family and that. Yeah, I'm doing all right, man. How about yourself?
Yeah, all good. Like you, looking forward to Christmas with two little ones who I think my oldest doesn't believe anymore. There's still a bit of magic with my youngest one. While that's still doable. So, Ady, I presume most people listening will probably know who you are, or have heard of you or your shows. But if anyone hasn't and is thinking, who is Ady Hanson? Tell us a bit more about yourself. Who is the man who sits before us, that new musical god who's so active on social media and so well respected? Who is Ady Hanson?
Oh, cheers, mate. I know this isn't going out in videos, so people can't see, but I'm really red in the face now. Thank you very much. I'm just Ady. I'm just an absolute massive lover of music. And over the last couple of years, I've started doing some radio shows and sharing lots of music on Twitter. Yeah, just basically promoting lots of new music, and that's pretty much me, mate, alongside my full-time job. But other than that, yeah, that's me.
So how did you get into new music? And what was the turning point of you thinking, I want to go as a musical listener to someone who pushes actively new music? And how did the show come about?
Well, so to be totally honest with you, I wasn't into new music. I didn't really know a lot of new music, the odd band here and there that I picked up from radio. But then COVID happened. I didn't even really know how to use Twitter at the beginning of COVID.
Wow.
I think I'd sent a couple of tweets about football, and I used it really just for checking football scores and stuff. And then I stumbled across the virtual pub crawl, and people were sharing music. And I thought, I'll do that. I'll share some music. And I got involved and met lots of lovely people, and there was a lovely sort of community feel to it. I got very drunk on some Saturdays. Yeah, and as sort of just progressed, it started following people started following me. You know, just sort of a music community thing. And then, the guy you just mentioned, Mr. Ady Rob, he was on last week, great episode, by the way. He kind of asked me if I wanted to do like a pre-crawl playlist, which went out on a Friday night. So there'd be like a virtual pub crawl on a Saturday, and I'd do one on the Friday for like an hour. Yeah, and then the guy from my local pub, Tommy, the manager in the pub, we were talking about it, and because he followed me on Twitter, and we were talking about it, and he just said, "You should do the radio. You've got a voice for the radio." I think he was being polite. I don't think he was just being rude. But yeah, he said, "You got a voice for radio," and he knew a guy who worked at a local radio station, and I started chatting to him and got an interview, like an actual interview, like this, on Zoom. They offered me a show on a Thursday, so I thought, well, why not? And so I decided what I would do is I would take classic indie, because obviously that's what I've been into pretty much my whole life, and I would mix it with new music to try and get people to listen to the classics and pick up some new. And that was kind of it from there. I've been doing it for over 2 years now. So, yeah. enjoyable.
Fantastic. And that show's still going, and you can listen anywhere in the world, right? So, Ady, if you want to give the show a plug.
Effectively, I'm actually doing on 2 different stations now. So I'm not on the original one that I went on because they couldn't offer me a 2-hour show. And people kept saying, do a 2-hour show. And I wanted to do a 2-hour show, but I wanted to keep the same time slot, 7 o'clock on a Thursday. So I got asked to go and join another local station called Windrush Radio. And they had a brand new, spanking new studio. And they invited me along and I went in and so I started there. So I do that every 2 weeks now. That's a live show. So I'm sat in the studio with a bottle of beer, just waffling and playing great music. And occasionally having some guests come in and doing some acoustic stuff, very occasionally at the minute. And then every other Thursday, I'm on In Your Ears Music, doing a completely just new music show, which is called. I was being clever with the word Thursday, and I literally just moved the D and the A around. So new music Thursday. And I do that one every other week. So that's kind of the radio stuff, and obviously trying to push the new music as best we can and getting people to hear some new artists. Yeah, that's what we do.
And how do you decide what gets on the shows? Do you actively search for the people?
I'm not going to lie.
Yeah,
it's really tough because you want everybody to be heard, really. And I hear a lot of people talking about radio shows and that you should just play the stuff you like. But that's not really what it's about for me, because just because I like it doesn't mean that everyone else is going to like it, but just because I don't like it doesn't mean that other people aren't going to like it. So I try to put some songs on there that I like, but I'm not like overly massive about, but they're slightly different songs. So it might be a slightly different genre of indie, you know? It might be a bit of shoegaze, which I love, so that's going to go on anyway. But it's not easy. I get sent a lot of music, and listening to it all isn't easy either. So, but yeah, no, it's literally, sometimes it is an hour full of music that I absolutely dig, because I've gone like, I've got to play that, and before I know it, I've filled an hour.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes I play some stuff that might not necessarily be right up my street, but it might be up somebody else's street. So we'll give it a go on the show. And it's all about trying to get these artists heard effectively. That's it.
And is there any, I guess we can come on to that later, but is there any who you've had on the show and you think, wow, like these acts are destined for bigger things?
Yeah, well, it's got literally nothing to do with me because they were both already well established. But I did play the Lavins and the Snuts in my early shows. Right. I think I played them both on my first show. Now, they were starting to make waves, but they weren't selling out arenas and stuff like that. And yeah, they definitely hit me straight away. And I was like, you could just tell that they were different level. But then there's lots of acts that I play on the show who I think are incredible, but it doesn't always necessarily transpire that they are live. You never know. You know, bands aren't always great live, and that's quite often especially at the minute, because that's the way they make most of their money is live. So, but yeah, no, there has been tons. I have got a list for later to tell you later. I don't want to ruin any surprises. So yeah, I've got a very, very long list to read out later.
Brilliant. I thought you may have, hence the question. So fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing and hearing about that list. So you've mentioned shoegaze. You've mentioned classic indie. Is that kind of where you're at? I mean, any other genres that you like to listen to, or is it just...
To be totally honest with you, I used to be a musical snob, very much a musical snob. I liked my field of music and I didn't listen to anything else. But as you grow up, you mature and your music taste matures. So I generally listen to pretty much anything at the minute. But because I listen to so much new music, I'm kind of focused on that mainly because that's what I get sent. But I don't mind a little bit of pop. I don't mind a little bit of cheese. I love a bit of dance music. I love having a bit of a pop. Yeah, I've got an eclectic music taste, but indie is definitely the field in which I sow, shall we say.
So I've already spoke about Indie Rob in my intro, and you've mentioned him. Since I had him on the podcast last week, he picked Doves. I've gone back into Doves, especially the first album, Lost Souls, which I love. So I'm listening to that all over again after quite a few years away from it. What are you listening to at the moment, Ady? Anything, whether it's new or old, that you're currently listening to?
Well, that is a difficult question because I am a massive fan of the Doves, so we could talk about Doves for the next hour if you wanted to, but obviously you don't want to. I still listen to lots of the classic stuff, but a lot of the time I am literally genuinely listening to playlists. But there's been a few albums this year from new artists that I listen to regularly. For example, Sun Zoom, That is an absolutely incredible album. The Heavy North, an incredible album, who Rob had on his Fantastival. Who else has released? Affleck's Palace, really dig them. You've got the Shed Project, they released an album this year, and I'm great pals with Roy, so I listen to them. And I see there's lots of bands that now release music that haven't released music for a while that you kind of forget about, and then you think they're an old band, but they're not actually an old band, so they're still releasing stuff. I went to see Kasabian recently up in Manchester. That was a brilliant night. Obviously not the usual lead singer or the old lead singer, but Serge was fantastic, and it was a great night. So I still listen to some of the classic stuff, and every once in a while I will just have a vinyl day, and I will just get all my old vinyl out and play the old classic albums. I'm not going to mention too many artists, because it's going to ruin surprise for later. Okay. But yeah, no, I'm always listening to vinyl when I can, but it's not always easy. I'm fortunate enough that in my work I can wear one ear pod, so I can actually listen to music at work. If I wouldn't be able to do the show if I couldn't, because I get a release radar playlist on a Friday, and then I'll make a playlist up of all the songs that were released that week or that day, and then I'll listen to that the following Monday at work over and over to get an idea of what I want to play on the next couple of shows and stuff like that. But yeah, it's really difficult for me to actually sit back and enjoy a full album without thinking about, somebody's sending me that song. If they sent me it yet, I need to check that, or But yeah, I'm always listening to music regardless, but a lot of the time it's just a playlist.
That's great to hear. I mean, I work for HMV and I work in the head office, so I've always had music on in my office environment. So when people say that, I find that so weird that music's just a normal way of my working life, and people, it's like a privilege, really, isn't it, to be able to listen to as much music as well.
Yeah, a lot of people can't. Like in an office environment, stuff like that, you can't really have them on. I don't work in an office. I build MRI scanners, so I'm on the shop floor day in, day out, but we are allowed to have an ear pod in. Obviously, for health and safety reasons, you can't have both, so you can't completely escape with the music. But that allows me to listen to a lot of music. If you're talking about the Doves, they would have made mine as well, but they're another one on that didn't quite make it. We'll talk about that in a minute, won't we?
Damn that Indie Rob, getting in first a week beforehand. Damn him.
Yeah, he's dashed my hopes with that.
So let me take you back, Ady, to when you were a younger man, just as handsome, I'm sure, but a bit younger, and it was time for you to buy your first record or single. Do you remember what that was and that experience?
Right, so I've had a long think about this, obviously, having listened to the pod. The first vinyl that I ever remember actually holding, I wouldn't have brought it, was Ian Jury with Hit Me With Your Rhythms. I remember having that in the house as a small child. I don't know whether it was because I asked for it. I was only about 4 or 5, but I definitely remember holding that. And I'm pretty sure that ended up in pieces because I threw it at my brother from the top of the stairs.
Oh, no way.
The first 7-inch I actually brought is quite embarrassing. But then I'd like to think that most people on here have got embarrassing stories. Now, mine was actually from the film Mannequin, and it was by a band called Starship.
Let me just stop you there for a sec. This is not an embarrassing story. This is, I always say, there's no such thing as a guilty pleasure. It's just a pleasure. This is a tune. What you're going to say is a tune, Ady.
Well, nothing's going to stop us now.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, to be totally honest with you, I think I was 10 or 11. So, yeah, at the time, it was a definite tune. And, there isn't such a thing as a guilty pleasure. But I also definitely remember, I think it was the same year, the film Stand By Me, and I loved the song Stand By Me so much that they issued it on 7-inch, and I went out and bought that by Benny King, and on the back of it was Yakety Yak by a band called The Coasters. Yakety Yak, don't talk back. Yeah, so that was I definitely bought that the same year as well. So they were the first ones I actually bought, but the first album that I ever bought was actually Life by the Inspiral Carpet, because my friend Jeff, who's been a massive influence on my music, was a huge fan of everything Manchester, so I got introduced to a lot of that stuff by him. But that was the first one that I actually bought with my own money. Went out and actually bought that and had it as a physical copy. That's not a bad shout.
No, some great shouts. Yakety Yak and Stand By Me, both in the Stand By Me film, which is an absolute masterpiece. I used to watch that on VHS all the time.
It's the best film of the 1980s, mate.
Up there, definitely up. That and Weird Science for me,
it's a good film.
And the Goonies are up the top.
Or the Lost Boys. Anyway,
Lost Boys, great shout. Get Arcade State on to talk about that. Brilliant stuff.
Yeah, true.
This podcast, Ady, is all about getting a guest to collate their fantasy festival. Are you a big fan of festivals? Have you been to many?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not going to lie to you. I hadn't been to any festival, proper proper music festivals until about 2008. And I went to one called Wakestock, which was held at Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire, and it was also held in Wales at the same time. And it was a wakeboarding festival, but they had 3 days of music as well. So you had like Mark Ronson was on, the Happy Mondays, Mystery Jets, and the highlight for me was a band called Pendulum from Australia. You heard of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were just massive, absolute massive. So yeah, it took me a long time to go to my first proper festival, and then I went to another one locally. I think it was the same year, about the next month, called Cornbury Festival, which is known as Posh Stock because it's quite a posh festival. So it had Paul Simon was on when I went. Crowded House were on when I went, which was one of the reasons I went, because they were another band that didn't quite make my Fantastival, but I had to go and see them live. And The Beat were playing as well, so that was pretty cool. But other than that, I've gone to my local festival. So the Whitney Music Festival's been running for about 10 years now, and it's a free festival. Well, actually, this year was the first time you had to pay, but that's basically to try and help it to keep going, really, because it's not a cheap thing to do, is it? Putting on a music festival. And we had Tom Hingley there this year with The Carpets, spelled with a K. I actually got to introduce him on stage, which was pretty cool.
Oh, wow, really cool.
Yeah, although it was quite embarrassing because I think I asked the crowd if they knew what noise a cow made, and about 2 people went moo. So then I said it a bit louder, and I said, you can do better than that. And then quite a few people mooed, and then I ran off the stage and he came on, and they were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And they have lots of local bands on as well. And I also want to give, while I've got an opportunity, there's another festival that Nikki and I have been to for the last 2 years called Front Row Festival, which is near Banbury, near Bicester in Oxfordshire. And it's run by Keith and Becky. That's a fantastic day. So this year they had the Heavy North headlining it. It was a proper special family kind of festival. So I just want to give a shout out to that. And also next year we're going to go Popper Festival. So we're going to Kendal, Corlin, and we're going to go to the Truck Festival, which is just down the road for me. And I can't believe that I'm 46 years of age and I've never been, and it's literally a few miles away. There you go. So yeah, we're getting into the festival scene late. Never done Glastonbury. Done Glastonbury at home many times.
Best way to
like
do
everyone
it.
Else.
Best way to do it, I think, Ady.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to go, but I think it's probably too big now. I think it might be just too big for me.
I think Kendal's a great shout. Seeing all the photos from it over the last year or two, Kendal looks like a really nice festival with great bands and great people.
Exactly, yeah. And they have lots of my kind of bands on as well. So this year, I think Revival, we were on the Apollo Junction, stuff like that. So it's quite and it's a lovely part of the world. So we're going to go up and make a week of it. So we're going to stay in an Airbnb for a few days and live properly. And then we're going to live like savages in a tent.
How it should be done.
Exactly,
so,
yeah.
Ady, do you have, and again, without giving away any spoilers, do you have a favourite gig at all? Or favourite gigs that you can talk about?
Without giving away any spoilers, my first proper gig, like a big stadium gig, I would call. I went to lots of local gigs and stuff like that. Was fortunately for me the Stone Roses at Wembley Arena in '95.
Wow!
So that will always stand out to me as my favourite gig because it was the Stone Roses, and I hadn't seen the Stone Roses, and I was 20. You know, I was with mates, and we had a day out in London, and we got very drunk. We were too cool though because the Manic Street Preachers were supporting, but we were too cool at the time to go and see the Manic Street Preachers because they weren't our thing at the time. So I do regret not going to see the Manic Street Preachers, but we probably wouldn't have got there anyway because, like I said, we did go out and have a fair few beers in London and got fined on the tube for not having the right spoilers again. A band called Bears Den in a church in London, acoustically, and it was just the most sensational thing musically I've ever heard. So yeah, that's probably up there as well.
I got invited to that gig and I couldn't go with work. But one of my guests, I've had one guest before pick Bears Den in like episode 31, a guy called Neil Taylor, and every time Bears Den played, me and Neil would go, and he managed to get a ticket, but I can't remember why, but I couldn't go to that church gig, but he said it was phenomenal.
Well, Nicky entered a Facebook competition. You know, those competitions that everyone enters that never ever wins. And we just randomly got a phone call on the Tuesday to say you won 2 tickets to go and see Bears Den. Yeah, at St Giles in the Field, which is a gorgeous church. It was a great night. And we managed to meet them as well before, just in the street. They were like having a fag and we just bumped into them. So that was pretty cool.
Very cool. Very cool. So, like I said at the start of the pod, this is all about getting our guest Ady tonight to collate his fantasy festival. So he has the very tough choice of choosing only 5 acts, one of whom must play one of their studio albums in full. And to end his fantasy festival, Ady gets to choose an encore which all 5 acts can perform together at the end of his Fantastival. So that can be any song by any artist ever. So we've already mentioned Indie Rob a few times. One last shout out for Indie Rob. He was on last week. He created his Days Gone By Fantasy Festival. In his opening act, he went for the Heavy North, who probably would have been chosen tonight, but because Indie Rob has chosen him, Ady, I don't think will. Super Seconds, we've spoken about them already. Doves, who made their Fantasy Festival debut. In his Midway Madness slot, Rob went for Oasis and had them play their debut album, Definitely Maybe. Great shout there. In his pre-headline act slot, Rob chose The National, who made their first appearance on the Fantastival podcast. And for his headline act, Rob chose the Beatles. Only the 7th time the Beatles have been chosen in this podcast. And for his encore, he had all of his 5 acts play Hey Jude. So very simple premise, 5 acts, 5 time slots. But before we can talk about any of those, we have the important questions of naming your festival and where you're going to hold it in the world. So Mr. Hanson, what are you going to call your fantasy festival?
Right, so I've got 2 names at the minute. I'm going to let you choose which one it is, because I can't decide. So I've gone for one, and it's Bop.
Okay.
Do you remember the song by Hanson?
Absolutely. I think once you've heard that song, you can't unhear it.
That song. Sorry?
Once you hear Bop, you can't unhear it.
Exactly. I got savage with that, because obviously it's my surname. But I thought that was quite a good play on the name, because it's my festival. Or this one probably gives away too much, but it was also going to be called This Is The One, because it's my one festival, and this is the one. Yeah. So I can't decide of those 2, so I'm going to let you decide. Bop or This Is The One.
Do you know what? I think we call it Bop, and in open bracket, This Is The One, close bracket.
That works.
Let's do it.
That does work. Yeah, I like that. I like what you've done there. We're just going to keep both. Sorry.
We're going to keep both. Do you know what? They're both great titles, and we'll chuck them both in. Bop, This Is The One. So you can take us anywhere you want. We can go Bicester Village. I know Bicester. I go past it on some train journeys to Birmingham with work. We can go to Oxford. We can go to London. Anywhere you want to take us, Mr. Hanson, we'll follow you anywhere around the world. So where do you want to hold your fantasy festival?
Well, I've already mentioned it earlier. So I went to a festival there. It's Blenheim Palace, which is just up the road from here. So it's local, which is obviously had to be local because it's my festival. And it's beautiful grounds. So there's lakes and there's bridges and it's just lush over there. We go over there. We take the grandkids over there in the summer and they just run around the field. It's just lush. It's just a lush place to be. So yeah, we'll hold it there because it's just up the road and my mother can, you know.
Great stuff. Everyone can come. Everyone's welcome to Bop. This is the one. So we've got a name. We've got a venue. So before we get to your 5 acts, I'm sure there's probably going to be a list of acts who haven't made it. I think before we started recording, you've said you've changed your lineup quite a number of times. So it sounds like it's going to be quite a number of unlucky acts who aren't going to make it into our Bop lineup.
Yeah, well, that's the problem for me is like you just mentioned, the Heavy North. They've been. I've done it about 4 or 5 different lineups because we've had 4 or 5 different Zoom calls planned and they've not happened for whatever reason. So my lineup's changed quite a lot. But then Rob had the Heavy North last week, and there's a few other people who have picked some of the newer acts that I might pick. And I've also decided that it's almost impossible for me to pick one new band. It feels like if I have one new band on, I'm leaving out too many, and I've ummed and ahed, so I've decided that I'm not going to have any new artists on my festival. But what we are going to do, if it's all right with you, we're going to actually have kind of like our Fantastival on the Saturday, but on the Sunday we're just going to have a new music festival just from the Sunday, from the morning till the night time. And I have got a list as long as your arm of people that I'd like there, and there's probably tons that I haven't got on this list. And this list will probably take as long for me to read out as the whole call has taken so far. If you don't mind me doing it.
I would love to hear the list. Love to hear it.
Right, so Perry Manning, The Superlatives, Rhiannon Downey, Skies, Moonlight Parade, Apollo Junction, The Heavy North, The Assist, The Shed Project, Jay Tennant, Sam Lambeth, The Snuts, Sylvie, Distant Images, The Lavans, Revivery, Fleshettes, The Stanleys, Peonies, or Penis, I'm not sure how you say it, The Claws, Pastel, Affleck's Palace, Red Rum Club, Jen Dixon, Ruby J, The Rars, Dictator, Candid, Skylights, The Royston Club, The Mariners, The Capollos, The K's, The Void, Nice Guy, Kiwi, Dee Dee's Garden Party, Rhiannon Downey, Sun Zoom and Brown Bear. And there's loads more that I could have read out there, and that's why I couldn't decide on one for the festival.
You've mentioned some amazing acts, some of who have been on the podcast. I know most of them, there's some I haven't heard who I'm sure I'll go and check out, but amazing list of new acts. So yeah, the Sunday's been authorised, the Fantastival jury have come in my ear. They've told me that's allowed, so we're good. We've got a new music stage on the Sunday. It's been authorised. Blenheim Palace have given us a 2-day permit as opposed to our 1-day permit. So that's all guns ahead. Any established acts or more acts who you want to shout out who aren't making it into your lineup?
Well, there's all the Manchester gang. So kind of like my formative years. So you go like... So I basically, my musical taste is kind of derived from my mum and my brother. So my mum used to listen to like Fleetwood Mac, Dr. Hook, people like that, Tom Petty, and my brother was listening to the Smiths and the Cure, All About Eve, that kind of sort of dark 80s indie kind of stuff. And then my pal was into the Manchester scene, and then we started dressing baggy down in Oxford. You know, there was a few of us walking around in our kickers or our British Knights and a massive baggy jeans and stuff like that. And then there was a bit of the rave scene. So that I could just add all those bands that I could have picked tonight. Or there was the Doves. The Doves could have been on there quite easily. They're in my top 5 bands of all time. Right. So they could definitely have been on there. Crowded House, they could have been on there because they're like where my go-to when I'm chilling. But yeah, so there's just too many. There's too many, isn't there? Like,
there is.
It's a great idea, your festival, but 5 acts is so tricky.
I know, but any more, and I have this conversation all the time, any more, the podcast would be too long and you kind of get away a bit lightly. So I think 5 is the perfect number where you can get enough in.
It's a good challenge. It is a good challenge because then, you know, I think every single person that's done your pod has probably spent a very long time deciding on the 5 acts. Because they've obviously all got great musical taste, otherwise you wouldn't have invited them on, would you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, all right, 2 o'clock in, Umbop, this is the one, ready to go. Lovely day at Blenheim Palace. So, Mr. Hanson, who is going to open Umbop?
Well, we've already mentioned them. I mentioned that I saw them in a church. I want to see them in the grounds of a palace, and it's Bears Den, because I absolutely love them, and I think more people should listen to them, but I think that about most bands I like. And my wife absolutely loves them as well. So she's going to be there. So they're our band. You know, like between the two of us, they are our band. The ones that we both absolutely love. I couldn't do this and not have them on there. So they're on there.
So for anyone who might not know Bears Den, because I feel like Bears Den should have got bigger with more albums. I think they've actually gone a bit backwards in terms of...
I think they've actually gone they're slightly bigger in the States. They do sell out their vinyls as soon as they release them. And tickets go pretty quickly as well. They have got a hardcore of fans, but they're kind of you could put them in the folk bracket, but that makes them But then I don't know. They just write beautiful songs with loads of meaning, and they're just incredible, and they're better live. Yeah. So that to me is that's the mark of a good band. Is if you go to see them live and you think, wow, I thought they were good listening to them on CD or on vinyl, but my God, are they amazing live? And they are. And I think they kick it off perfectly because they're nice and mellow, nice and chilled. So it's a nice way to start. The sun's shining, isn't it? So it's just take it easy while we're still enjoying our alcohol.
Great stuff. Bears Den opening your fantasy festival. They get to play from 2 till 3 o'clock. We'll take a half-hour break. That'll take us to 3:30. It'll be time for your super seconds act. So, Ady, who are you going to have follow Bears Den and be your super seconds act?
So when I was considering this, I wanted someone in there that there's not. I wouldn't say different because they are a huge band. They were a huge band, but some that sort of identifies them to me, and it's the Cranberries. I'd love to have the Cranberries on there because I never got to see them. And Dolores, for me, she's got the best female vocal I've ever heard, and I want to hear Dreams. So they're going to play second, which is they've got some noisy numbers as well, so that'd be a good mix.
That'd be a great mix. Why is Dreams quite an important song to you then?
I just think it's an absolutely incredible piece of work. Or Ode to My Family is a beautiful, beautiful song. And then I don't know, they've just got a body of work that would work greatly for this for me. And I don't know, I just think Dolores was, I just think, an incredibly insanely talented artist. And I want to see her live, and I can't.
Well, your fantasy festival, so the Cranberries are booked. They're playing their first time they've been picked for a fantasy festival. So they're going to make their Fantastival debut. Yes, indeed. So you get to take your super second slot. and they will give us an hour of their time. That'd be a great set. Like you said, she's got an amazing voice, amazing band. They get to play from 3:30 to 4:30. So take another half-hour break. That will take us to our Midway Madness points. Mr. Hanson, who's going to be your Midway Madness act?
Right, so when I thought about the 5 on a night, and it's called the Midway Madness, Midday Madness. So it's got to be something that's going to get people up and bouncing around and a bit lively and a bit mad. So I'm going to go for the Prodigy, because they are another insanely good band live, and they have also got a massive, massive body of work. And I remember when I was 15, 16, just leaving school, we started going to some local raves and things like that. And we got into the dance music stuff. So me and my pal Davey bought a set of, I think it was Citronics, something like that, decks, and he got some dancey music. And I remember Everybody That's in the Place by The Prodigy was just an insanely good tune. And we used to pretend we were DJs and mix and stuff in our bedrooms and do other things that we're not allowed to talk about on this pod. And basically enjoy ourselves. And then got to see The Prodigy live, and they've released some incredible albums as well. And I just think Midday Madness, you don't get much madder than The Prodigy, do you?
Absolutely. Great shout. 5th time The Prodigy have been picked. They get spoken about loads in terms of the podcast, in terms of best gigs, and sometimes missed acts, but great to see them in your lineup. So The Prodigy, Midway Madness slot, they're going to play 5 till 6. So 3 acts down, 2 acts left. We'll take another half-hour break. That'll take us to 6:30. It'll be time for your pre-headline act, who are going to get an hour and a half to play your fantasy festival. So, Ady, who's going to be your pre-headline act?
Well, I can't believe that these are the pre-headline act, really. They should be the headline act, but they're not. And you'll know why in a minute when I tell you. And I never got to see them live. I went with my mate's missus in the car to pick him up from a gig that they did, but I never got to see them live, and it's R.E.M.
Right, okay. When you...
Which, it seems sort of strange to have them as not as a headliner. But R.E.M. Again, it just goes back to like growing up. Me and my pal Henry, who lived in a massive house, and he had a dart room downstairs, and we'd go and play darts and just listen to R.E.M. endlessly for hours. So, and then they've just also got, I keep saying it, but an insanely massive body of work. So I'm not going to pick the songs. I'll let them do that, because they are artists after all, and it's what they do. But they could play for 10 hours. They got that much music. And I just think that they'd get the crowd going as well. Who doesn't like R.E.M.?
Yeah, great shout, great act. The 3rd time they've been picked on the Fantastival podcast. They've never been picked as headliners before, and they've never been picked as pre-headliners before. So they've only made 2 appearances, one as a Midway Madness, one as a Super Second. So you're giving them the most amount of time they've ever had at a fantasy festival. So Mike and Pete and the boys are well happy with that one. So R.E.M. going to play from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. We'll take 1 more half-hour break, and then it'll be time for your headline act. Now, I've never met you before. Well, we've obviously spoken a bit back and forth, but I know the T-shirt you're wearing. I know you said about your favourite gig. I know about our second title of the fantasy festival. So I think I've got an inkling of who it might be, but I might be surprised, I might not. So Mr. Hanson, who's going to headline Umbop? This is the one.
Well, I ummed and ahed about whether I should put them on or not, because it's pretty obvious, if you know anything about me, that I absolutely love the Stone Roses. And they, to me, they were my pathway into the music that I love now. They were also, I don't know, like I said, the first big band I saw in a big venue. I absolutely adored them. I was the kind of person that went out and bought the smash hits just to get the lyrics to put on the wall, posters from the Enemy on the wall. Anything Stone Roses I could find went on my wall. I absolutely adored them. And I found them because I was in my brother's bedroom, and I shouldn't have been, because he wasn't there. And I was rifling through his music, and he had the cassette of the first album. And I just looked at it and I thought, that looks really cool. I'm going to listen to that. And I went in my room and I did. And I listened to it over and over for about 6 hours, I think. And then a couple of weeks later, me and my pal Dave went camping, and I took a little ghetto blaster. I took the batteries out and nicked a couple of cigarettes out of my mum's fags and put them in there. Didn't need to tell you that, did I? And I took the Stone Roses. It was the only album we took. And it was all we listened to for 2 nights camping. And yeah, they're just like the biggest influence musically for me. They have, if I'm ever, not that I can ever not think of something to listen to, but they are always there for me if I need to, become 15 or 16 again. I just love it. And I know that they're not brilliant live, so I've seen them 5 times live, and I know that they're not great, and I know that it's not the same, but every single time I've been to see the Stone Roses, there is a vibe, there is an atmosphere that I've never experienced at any other gig. Like, just everyone just seems to be buzzing and, to coin a phrase, mad for it, for a Stone Roses gig. And then when the intro comes on, it just takes me away to a different place. So they're definitely, I couldn't not have them as headliners. It doesn't make any sense to me to not have the Stone Roses headlining my gig. And they can play the full album as well, because that's one of your requirements, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. What would
they
you
can play it twice if they want for 2 hours.
Great shout. I've got to ask you, you obviously went and saw him 5 times, so you saw him the second time round. Was that as enjoyable as the first time round?
I think because of the first time round I went with a load of mates, like I said, and we all got drunk and stuff like that. The second time round, I don't think any of those mates came to see them with me the second time around. So it was some of my other friends who I've probably known for longer than the other ones I went to that gig, but they're still all my mates. But that made it special for me. It was Heaton Park. I did, for some bloody stupid reason, I bought a brand new pair of white Sergio Tacchini, and I left them in the hotel bin because there wasn't much left of them other than just mud. But no, they were incredible second time round. Yeah, definitely. Just it's just about as much about the atmosphere to me at a gig as it is. I know it sounds stupid about the music. If the atmosphere is spot on at a gig, you can get away with the Stone Roses not being amazing live.
Yeah, million percent. I completely know what you're saying. And the little point that you made where you're talking about stealing your mum's cigarettes, I think that's why I enjoy most about this podcast, because it's those little bits of detail that you find from doing this about someone, and they just share their stories because they're so comfortable talking about music and their emotive experience.
No, that's a good shout. I like that. Now you do, don't you? Because when I was explaining to it then, and then I was like, me and Dave, I took the Get Blast. I remember taking some, and it just came out. I wasn't even thinking about that.
Yeah,
you're right. You do. Once you're talking about something that you're passionate about and you love about, you do sort of kind of let your inhibitions go and just talk, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why I love this podcast. So the Stone Roses are making their 3rd Fantasy Festival appearance. Only the 3rd time they've ever been picked. I guess unsurprisingly, Roy from Shed Project had them as his headliner, and the only other time they got picked was episode 11, I think, and my friend Dan Stone had him as his opening act. So Ian, John, Mane, Rene, the boys are back. They're going to play 2.5 hours, and then they're going to take us to 11 o'clock. Then they're going to welcome back on stage R.E.M., The Prodigy, The Cranberries, and Bears Den, and they will get to play one song of your choice. Now, if I was a brave man, I'd make them play Umbop, but I think if I made them play Umbop, they'd look at me and refuse to do it. So, Ady, the responsibility's on you, mate, for this one. What are you going to have all 5 of your acts play? This
wasn't easy either, deciding a song, but I wanted something anthemic that means a lot to me, and I think means a lot to other people. And I've never met anybody that says they don't like it. I mean, it's a very, very well-played song. So it's been maybe overplayed, some people might say, but I don't think so. And it's Love Will Tear Us Apart.
Great.
I just think with all those, especially with those artists as well, doing Love Will Tear Us Apart, Dolores bouting out the chorus, the crowd will join in. It'll just be awesome.
That's a great shout and a great encore. So let's lock it in. So we got Umbop, this is the one, taking place at Blenheim Palace. Opening acts, we've got Bears Den. Super seconds, we've got the Cranberries. Midway Madness, we've got the Prodigy. Pre-headline act, we've got R.E.M. And headlining your fantasy festival with Stone Roses, who are also going to play their debut album, The Stone Roses, in full. And for your encore, all of your acts are going to play Love Will Tear Us Apart. Mr. Hanson, you happy with your fantasy festival lineup?
Get that locked in before I change my mind again.
So that is locked into the Fantastival Thoughts. A great choice, a great fantasy festival. So before we finish this one, what do the next couple of months look like for you, Ady? What you got going on?
Well, gigs-wise, I haven't got that many more to go. In fact, I'm terrible with remembering, Stephen. I'm absolutely awful at remembering what gigs I've got coming up. So I just normally check on a Monday on my calendar, but I know I haven't got any this week, so I haven't looked. But I know I'm going to see Moonlight Parade down in Brighton. They're playing in a Christmas, I think it's like a Christmas market more or less thing, but it's a free gig, so they're playing at the end of it, so you can go and do some Christmas shopping, and then they come on, and so I'm looking forward to that. I was supposed to be going to see the Claws on the 23rd of December, but I can't go now because we're driving down to take my mum to my brother's on the Saturday morning rather early, and I can't get back from Birmingham in time. So unfortunately, I can't go to their Christmas party. There are a couple more gigs as well, but off the top of my head, I can't remember what they are. And then in the new year, there's loads of gigs happening again. So we've got Athletics Palace again, the Shed Project again, and next year, like I said, we're doing the festivals and stuff. But yeah, I think it's probably going to be fairly quiet. I've obviously got some radio shows going out leading up to Christmas as well, so I'll be busy doing them. Busy at work. Yeah, pretty much.
I'm going to say the radio shows continuing throughout, so they will be available, like you said, one on Radio Windrush every other Thursday, and then in your ears every other Thursday. So you've always got some weekly show here.
Yeah, so basically the live show, obviously you can't tune in live. It doesn't matter whether you're tuning in live or not. I enjoy the live shows more because I'm more at ease.
Yeah.
You're not writing stuff and reading it. You're just playing off the cuff kind of stuff. But that goes out live, and then it also goes on Mixcloud, so you can listen back to that. The one on In Your Ears Music, the one whose name I think was a great idea at the time, but I cringe when I say it as New Music Thursday. That goes out every 2 weeks, and that's available on Spotify, Apple, and Mixcloud. It's almost like a podcast, really, because I record it at home, but we still call it a radio show. So I'm halfway through recording this Thursdays as I'm speaking to you now. So, yeah.
Great stuff.
Busy
Indeed. And if anyone doesn't, I'm sure everyone who's listening does follow you or is aware of you on social media. If anyone doesn't follow you on social media, where can people find you if they want to hear your recommendations or get links to your shows?
Over on Twitter, I'm Ady_Hanson. That's me on Twitter. I have got Instagram, and you can find me just by my name, and Facebook, but I don't really know how to use Instagram. I'm more of a technophobe than I actually realised I was. So when I go on Instagram, I'm like, you can't do this on it, but I do that on that, and I can't do that on it. And I'm like, how'd you do that? And I don't get it. So I don't really use it much.
Yeah, I agree. There's so many things that you can do that I can't do on there, which makes it more complicated than what it should be. So that is what a way to end it. Thank you for listening to the 112th episode of the Fantastival Podcast. If you've enjoyed this one, please subscribe, give the Fantastival Podcast a review on iTunes, or you can rate the show on Spotify. And don't forget to recommend all this to all your families and your friends. Ady's on Twitter, so is the podcast. So if you don't follow us, make sure you give us a follow at FantastivalP, and you can also email the pod at fantastivalpodcast@outlook.com. Unfortunately, we don't play music on this podcast, but I'll get some tracks from Ady of his chosen artists and maybe a few more, and we'll put that Fantastival guest. It's been a pleasure to finally get you on. I've really enjoyed listening to you talk about music, and your lineup's fantastic. How have you found, I guess, from being a host to a guest?
To be honest with you, I still get nervous doing the shows, even pre-recorded shows. I'm recording my own show, and I get nervous. But I was so nervous this afternoon waiting for you to send me the codes to come to this. Honestly, because you're almost not out of your comfort zone because we're talking about music. It can't be much more. There's nothing more comfortable than music. It's like a lovely warm jacket. But, I was definitely really, really nervous about you asking me questions about the kind of music that I listened to when I was younger and stuff like that, and my memory actually working. So, yeah. But no, I've loved it, mate. It's been brilliant. Thank you for having me on.
No, top man, you've been a fantastic guest, and I look forward to listening to many more shows from you and new music recommendations. So 112 now is done. I'll be back next week with episode number 113. So please make sure to join me. But until then, stay safe, my Fantastival friends. Please continue to spread the word. And that word is Fantastival. Thanks for listening.